Thank you, Zoe. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our April meeting of our Strategic Planning and Policy Committee. We would first of all like to ask Dalmarie to do a karakia for us.
Tēnā tātou I te whare. I mua I te rangi ina nahira o te pakanga o rākau, te rā maumahara. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou I tai atu ki reira, ki te kai ata pō, I te pōwhiri ina nahira, I te kōrero ki o mātou kaupapa, hei te paki waitara I te maumahara. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Tēnei te mauri ka piki aki ki te rangi I tūnei, he rangi atua, he rangi tipua, he rangi tawhito. Kia whiti ko te mātauranga, kia tau ko te māramatanga. Whaia kia tata, puritia kia mau, haumie, huie, tae kie. Tēnā tātou.
Thank you, Dalmarie. All right, we'll start with our apologies this morning. We have an apology from Bill Harris, Bill for personal reasons. I believe he's away at the moment. And just like to welcome Roger, you are here. You can't see you in person, but you are here online in attendance. So good morning from Brisbane.
Yes, I am. Good morning. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I can't get my wonderful picture on the screen for you all to have a look at me.
All good. We'll see you next week anyway in person.
Yes.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that apology? So Councillor Brown and Councillor Brown, Andrew and Lou, all in favour? Carried.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, disclosures of members' interests this morning. Any on the agenda? So, Mayor Susan.
I just wanted for noting the fact that in respect of item 10, which is our proposed submission on the fast track bill, that also makes mention in that of Te Tiriti Whaimana. I'm a member of the Waikato River Authority. Just a note.
Thanks, Susan. Any others this morning? No. Any late items? Nothing. Very good. Confirmation of the order of the meeting. Everyone happy with the order? Claire's going to move that, and we've got Monty who'll second that. All in favour? Carried.
Aye.
Thank you, Roger. Confirmation of the minutes on the 5th of March. Just one little tweak there, just the spelling of Ange Holt. Are there any other changes, amendments anyone would like to see? No, I'll ask for a move and a seconder of those minutes, please. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Bruce. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. We've also got the extraordinary minutes on the 12th of March. Everyone happy with those minutes? No changes as far as I'm aware. Marcus is going to move those and Claire's going to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Right, this brings us to our first item of the day, which is our development contributions update, the 24-25 rates, and we have Tony in the room. Morning, Tony. We're on page 75.
Good morning, everyone. I will take the report as read and just bring attention to the second appendix around the rate changes and highlighting what they are. So obviously there's a few adjustments within those rates, but the totals are lower than what the totals for the previous year were. Therefore, there's no need to consult with these numbers that we have in front of us. How we've gotten to those numbers was based on the project lists that we had previously, the reserve amounts that we had recovered, and then chopping those off the project list to ensure that we're over-recovering against the projects that we had on the books. With the enhanced annual plan route, we haven't been able to adjust and include any new LTP projects that were previously. So that's why we haven't got the increase in rates that we would look to consult on. And we'll look to do that as part of the next LTP that we go through. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions? So Claire.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you. The questions I had was the specific amounts. So that's on page 81 of our agenda or appendix 2. First, it's about Kihikihi and then Wharongia. Kihikihi has had a big reduction in the roading one. Yeah, that doesn't counterintuitive, really. Yeah.
So through the chair, that was just to check against what the specific projects were for Kiki. So the specific projects for Kiki were roading brownfields roading charges. for the project's code there. It had around 300,000. As we'd seen a large uptake in Kiki through that period, it brought forward the recovery much quicker than what we anticipated. Similar with the stormwater charge in that space as well. We had around 400,000 for that, and that has now been recovered.
And then for Pirongia, again, there's been a big reduction in the roading, but I guess that's the same answer. But stormwater, it's still at zero. And I've had a few discussions about the stormwater charges for Pirongia residents and the rating side of things. Yeah, so, and I've been told that a lot of work and investment is needed in Pirongia. So I would have expected the DCs for stormwater also to have a reasonable charge on them.
So through the chair, so you do have some greenfield areas in Pirongia, but the benefit only goes to those areas. So it's therefore their charge to install that infrastructure, invest to council, as opposed for us investing in specific infrastructure catchments that enable us to rate the recovery. In terms of any of the level of service projects that are in place, it's not growth that's creating that impact, as all the management of flows goes to pre-development level before going back through to the systems. So there's no real ability for council to on-charge through DCs. If you do that DC pool versus what the Pirongia catchment for funding is, it's a small catchment of growth that we're expecting in Pirongia, given the land sizes, given the wastewater systems. So it would be become a huge factor if there was a percentage to go into that growth column.
Oh, no, thanks. I appreciate your explanations. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the DC policy? No, as Tony said, we'll take that as read. I guess, Tony, this has probably been well received by developers, landowners. I imagine, given that usually it's the price of the DCs that they're quite concerned about. In the past, it has created a lot of interest, let's say. So how do you feel? I mean, I know you're very in tune with a lot of our developers anyway. And as I said, no doubt that they're probably quite happy with the fact that there's not many changes. But have you got anything else from their perspective that they might be likely to raise in the future?
Yeah, through the chair, you only have to look at HCC and where they're at with their LTP process. So they're increasing their development contribution rates between 40 to 100% across the board. No DC is going to be less than 38,000 in their category. And there's been about 4 or 5 articles from the Property Council, from developers that are saying this is going to be towing the line between what is going to be actually serviceable for them. The biggest one being Peacock's development, that has gone up to be from 48,000 to 106,000 per lot. So none of our DCs were going to get to that point, even through the LTP range. A large portion of that is their wastewater treatment plant that they need to build. It's their spatial treatment plant, but the other portion is around their bridges that they need to build as well. So huge factors and huge infrastructure that looks to service them. And yeah, they're seeing a lot of backlash from developers saying this is going to put a lot of projects on hold. They're also seeing a lot of expected revenue return from those being installed. I think it's about 40% increase in revenue return they expect to see. Then I believe that the developers in that region are saying, well, if we can't actually develop there, then your revenue line's going to be at attack, basically. So from our perspective of not changing the rates or lowering them, that might be more of an enticement rather than having to double the rates to get the same outcome.
So just on that theme then, is there anything else that we can be doing to make Te Awamutu more enticing? Because, you know, we've spent a lot of money on infrastructure bringing water to Te Awamutu, and we kind of had anticipated that we'd start to see, you know, in industry wanting to come to Te Awamutu. Is there anything else that you feel like we should be doing?
It's a tough one. I think that there's a lot of external factors that go into enticement. I mean, we can only show that we're open for business through our consenting realms and enabling that supply. We do have a lot of active growth cells and live zone growth cells that do see development in them. Some have tapered off, but we're only one part of that puzzle in terms of enabling the supply. We're not that driving force that can really entice the development. It all comes down to their profit margins. And although the developers do say that this will hinder their projects and hinder their development aspects, DCs is only one component of that element. It's not a huge component of their overall markup and their profit margins. Yeah.
All right, look, thanks, Tony. Are there any other questions? Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Liz, through you. So what I'm hearing is that for a year, our DCs are going to be, well, at the rates we've got in front of us, but at the next LTP, they are likely to jump quite substantially.
Yes and no. So through the LTP process, there were no new projects for Kiki. There were no new projects for some of those other smaller areas. We didn't do anything specific to those to enable that growth in the area, given we'd already done the infrastructure investment into them. But the likes of C1 to 3 will see an increase in fees based on the project costs to date and the new costs that come in line with what we expect. So the range of what that may jump to, it's dependent on the methodology that gets accepted as well by council with the new policy that we bring on board. So we would expect to see a jump from anywhere between 20 to 40% in those rates. That's the sort of wet finger expectation. In terms of the industrial area, we do need to increase the rates in there, but that's caveated with the fact that we also did multipliers through our methodology for the specific infrastructure components. So that rate didn't change dramatically for the industrial, which we still need to invest heavily in. Yeah. So the industrial rates will largely stay the same.
Follow up, please. So the Peacocks DCs are going up partly because of the wastewater treatment plant that we will have a part to play in, I'm getting. So is that going to impact significantly on the airport and surrounds in terms of DCs?
So through the chair, yeah, their treatment plant relies on us having funding in the LTP. But I suppose that treatment plant's broken down into 3 different stages. You've got the stage 1, which enables a certain amount of volume to be treated. They'll go ahead and do that treatment. We're a module that's on top of that. So for us, eventually that will come a day that we need to work through the Northern Precinct, work through other partners around that area that want to develop to enable that. I wouldn't think that we would be doing that in the next LTP cycle to add that cost in, as that adds a huge amount of debt with no known growth sale plan and enabled infrastructure in there other than the airport themselves. They may look to do an MBR plant, which is a simple one, but they would need regional consent to do so in the short term. We have worked through development agreements recently with the airport around them providing us a financial contribution towards what their share of their existing terminal would be to that system. So we worked out what that would be. And that also feeds into the reason why we're needing to do some targeted consultation with the airport out there for the arrangements of the sucker trucks, etc. So taking over that ownership. But the Northern Precinct, for all intents and purposes, they will need to provide a system on site or working with the HCC adjoining partner to get that treatment online.
Yeah, the debt implications were, yeah, I thought, yeah.
Yep.
All righty, thank you for that. There's no other questions. We've got a recommendation on page 75, A and B. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Philip. And Mike Pettit. All in favour? Carried. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is our draft enhanced annual plan. So we've got Melissa and Ken. Page 154.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Good morning. So following on from the SPMP meeting on the 3rd of March, where the draft budget and consultation topics were approved, the purpose of this report is to present to you the approval of the draft consultation document and the associated supporting documents for your approval. So the Word version of the CD was attached to the report, and the designed version has been tabled as part of this agenda item, and I understand that's also now attached to the end of your agenda or in diligent. So although the CD is a technical document, that must meet certain legal requirements. It is obviously the key way for us to tell our story to our community and provide information on the main things that we are seeking for feedback on through this consultation process. So the two specific topics that we're seeking feedback on is whether or not to demolish the Cambridge Water Tower, noting that is at seismic risk. And then a second topic around general feedback on our approach to our financials. So noting that we are going out with a proposed average rates increase of 14.8%. We are nearing our debt ceiling, which obviously reduces the opportunity for our ratepayers to shape the district moving forward. The consultation period will run from this Friday, so the 5th of April, and will close on the 26th of April. This is obviously a shorter consultation period than what is ideal, but I think as I've alluded to in the past, we are dealing with incredibly tight timeframes. And following this, a hearing is scheduled between the 20th and the 22nd of May. Happy to take the report as read and take questions.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Right, okay, any questions for Melissa on this draft plan? Really looking forward to this going out to the community. I've heard lots of very interesting feedback already on the Cambridge Water Tower, lots of ideas, very creative ideas. So really interested to see what comes through on that particular item. But of course, yeah, the 14.8% increase will no doubt generate lots of discussion. So this is really the why is really important, how we got here. And of course, we're only just doing a one-year plan. So there's a greater opportunity for bigger community projects and the long-term plan in a year's time. So, Claire.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to say, yeah, it looks really great to me, and thanks for all the hard work to get it in this to this point. I haven't seen the designed or the reformatted one. It doesn't appear to be in diligent. That's all. It's in there now. Okay.
Yeah, page 570 is the added information.
Yeah, I just thought, wow, yeah, okay. I've got a few sort of minor things that I'll send through, just little changes. But one thing I wanted to query was it's on page 170 of our agenda. I don't know if they've got page numbers actually. It's under after spot the difference about the changes, like there's capital expenditure and then operating expenditure. And it's the operating expenditure on page 170 that I wanted to just see whether or not we could actually put the amounts in, because the amounts for each line are given for capital expenditure and then further down what we are spending the money on, but operating expenditure doesn't have those amounts. It's got one, remove 2.7 million operating project cost for Te Arawai, but all the other things don't have an amount, and it's inconsistent, but also I think our readers, our community would like to know those amounts.
Thank you, Claire. I'll let Ken respond.
So through the chair, I guess the issue is that these ones are a little bit harder to precisely quantify. But we have done that exercise previously. Look, we'll certainly give it a go in terms of where we can quantify, we certainly will. Yeah. And actually, sorry, just to follow through the chair, there is a provision in the in the recommendation to allow those sorts of minor changes. So I think that would accommodate the inclusion of those figures where we can.
Thank you, Ken. And yet, Claire, I do agree with you. I guess a lot of our narrative over the last few months has been around the rates increase needing to be higher because of those reasons, highest interest rates and the depreciation charges and all sorts of things and higher inflation. So this would at least provide some quantitative amounts as to how we kind of landed with the increases. So yeah, support that. Roger, you have a question online?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I can understand the reason why and all of the explanations of why we've had to adopt this enhanced annual plan. My concern is there's a lot of words there, And I'm just wondering, or I'm hoping that when it goes into the consultation document, that we may be able to simplify that in terms of diagrams and making it more easy to understand by the ratepayer. I'm not too sure that they'll have the inclination to want to read through all of that documentation.
Thanks, Roger. Just to clarify, so we haven't adopted this. This is the draft consultation document to go out to our community. So I just think some of your wording wasn't quite right there. So what you're really asking is, in this draft consultation document, you would like to see more graphics than the words. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure, just for any listeners, that this is not the adopted one. This is simply a draft. And this is the consultation document. So I'll just let Melissa answer your question.
Can I just clarify that? So we are adopting the consultation document today. The enhanced annual plan itself will remain in draft until it's adopted by council towards the end of financial year. So the consultation document is actually what we're adopting today, and that will be final. To your point, Roger, I understand what you're saying with respect to the words, and it might look like a lot. I guess what I would say, all the information in there is really important to be able to tell our story to our community. But also, if you look at the design version, which is now being tabled as a part of this item, it does look a lot more digestible for the community and doesn't look quite so text heavy, even though the text hasn't changed. It just makes it a little bit easier to read.
Okay. And my second point is to do with the consultation on the Cambridge Water Tower. The one thing that I see that, and I did ask the question, I did get a response to this, but the funding for the two options is different. And I'm wondering whether there is a need to refer to the funding source or the funding treatment of each option.
So through the chair, actually, Roger, I believe you did get a response to that.
Oh, yes, I did. Yep. Yes,
Oh,
I
you
did.
did. Oh, sorry. I thought
Yes.
you were suggesting that you
No,
didn't.
no. I
Yep,
did get a
okay,
response.
So therefore you do, so you are aware the funding sources are different. Look, Councillor Gordon, I think although we have answered that on the basis of the, on the basis of the normal funding sources, look, this is one where it's, I guess, relatively early days. We are testing the community in terms of the, well, I suppose essentially the removal of the water tower. That's kind of the, I suppose the position that we were taking into the draft annual plan. And the draft annual plan, there is expenditure provided to essentially begin the process of the demolition. The first step of that would be securing a resource consent. So that's there's a relatively minimal amount of money in this annual plan that we're consulting on. But I guess this is just the test with the public that is the option they want to pursue. If it turns out that through this process, council decides they want to go down the path of actually restoring the Cambridge Water Tower, which would be a far more significant matter in monetary terms. Look, we would probably want to look at the funding, the funding mix for that again, Roger. We'd look at that again in consultation with you people and take that into the next long-term plan that we adopt next year. But just to indicate to you and to all councillors that essentially the position that is in this annual plan is that we seek to secure a resource consent to demolish, or a demolition to consent to demolish the tower, and this is just an opportunity for the public to come back in terms of their indication as to whether they like that approach or not.
Yeah, thank you. My final point is probably more a statement than it is a question, but this is particularly a Cambridge issue, isn't it? The fact that you know, the water tower is part of the Cambridge heritage. So I'm hoping that the specific views of the Cambridge ratepayers will be taken to give an indication of what they would like to see in this regard.
Yeah. So through the chair, so I understand why you're saying that, Councillor Gordon, but bearing in mind that there is a large component of district-wide funding in this matter, you know, whether it's a demolition or whether it's a restoration. There is a wide amount of district-wide funding involved. So yeah, you know, I do believe it is a district-wide issue, and yeah, you know, a district-wide response is appropriate.
Yeah, but I think my point there was that I hope the views of the Cambridge community are going to are being taken into consideration here, as it's very much part of their heritage.
Thank you, Roger. I guess my comment on that is that if all views will be considered, and the people around this table, all Waipa District councillors, will be the decision makers ultimately on what happens with the water tower. So look, I think there's some excellent ideas that are coming out of our community already, and look forward to the discussion on that. Right, are there any other queries around this item? Any questions? Any changes? Otherwise, we do have a change to our recommendation, which we might just pop up on the screen. So Diane is here to do that this morning. Just a couple of wee tweaks. We'll give you a few moments to read that. Can everyone read that? Everyone's happy with that? It's pretty straightforward. Susan?
Can I just make that comment that reading the text without the human part of it and the graphics and the graphs and tables and things is so much harder than when you see the likely published version. So I apologise profusely for any criticism that I lodged it in its draft sort of stages, because it brings it to life, right, when you see it more in a published type form, and it flows a whole lot better than just the text on a page. So yeah, like I just want to put it on record that I was probably a little bit unduly harsh until such stages they were all introduced. So great work, team.
Yeah, Claire?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say I really like the tone of the consultation document. I felt it was sort of couched in really human and sort of down to earth sort of terms that anyone could understand, and I thought it was a really good approach. Yeah, and so with that, I'm happy to move with those amendments.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Claire. So this is where we are moving recommendations A, B, C, D, and E. Claire is moving. Susan is seconding. All in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. No one against. And again, congratulations to the entire team on the efforts. I want to name names, but I'm scared I'm going to miss somebody out. But I know Lisa's over there. I know Melissa's there. So the entire team, thank you very much for the great work. And it has not been easy. I absolutely acknowledge that. The changes, especially for the finance team, Ken, your team, that has been a bit up and down, let's just say. So yeah, we've got a document that will go out now for consultation on Friday. It will open, and look forward to the many submissions that we were here. But just remind everybody that we'll be closing at the end of just before the end of the month. So yeah, make sure we get them in on time. Okay, all right. We've got that recommendation out the way. What we will do is we'll carry on through our agenda. Right. So look, we were we were scheduled for morning tea now, and we have got a short agenda, and there is our next item. We're just waiting on our speaker. So how about we just take a break, and for 15 minutes, we'll come back at 9:45. Everybody, thanks. Oh, we'll just jump on back on live. Thanks, Zoe. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Back into our agenda. So we'll move on to our proposed Waipa District Council submission on the fast track approvals bill. And we've got Kirsty to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morena koutou. First of all, just apologies from David Hopman, who authored this report. He's on annual leave today and was hoping to get here, but you're running well ahead of time. I'd like to respectfully request that this report be taken as read and just highlight some key points. The government released this bill for public consultation at the beginning of March, and we have until the 19th of April to make submissions. The request for you today is that you provide approval for staff to prepare a submission and for that to be finalised and approved by the Mayor together with Wayne Allen, GM District Growth and Regulatory, with a reporting back to the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee through the next report, the District Growth Quarterly Update report. It's noted also that Future Proof will be preparing a submission on behalf of the sub-region, and it is the intention that staff would input into that together with elected members. There was some discussion at the most recent Future Proof Implementation Committee in this regard. Important that given the bill references nationally and regionally significant projects, that we work in collaboration with our Future Proof partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Appreciate that. Okay, questions from councillors. We've got Lou and then Claire.
Just in the submission, it has the lack of plan to address climate change. I do notice in reading the bill itself and its representation that they were going to issue an ERP2, which is coming in line, but they were working on actually moving the emissions trading scheme. So they were talking of utilising that far more because that is a broken system.
So sorry, Lou, I think you're on the next item.
Oh, sorry, am I mic'd me up?
You are one step ahead of us, I tell you. Yeah.
What am we on the proposed fast track?
Yeah.
Go back, sorry.
Yeah, so no, that's all cool.
I'm
So-
on it, yep.
So we're on page 395. The 395. Okay, Claire, do you want to have it? That's all right. Claire, question.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I really would like to see us make a submission on the fast track bill, and really concerned with that concentration of power in those ministers' hands. Yeah, and I think it really opens the door to impacts on conservation land and reserves, but then wildlife ecosystems and more generally environmental degradation. I did look at there was a supplementary assessment report that was referenced in David's report, and I read that, and yeah, they highlighted in that the limited analysis on the inclusion of non-RMA legislation, and so that's to do with proposals that relate to conservation, heritage and public works legislation.
Yeah.
And in fact, yeah, the powers that they have to dispose of conservation land or land that has been taken for public works and now might be used for one of these projects. You know, there's none of that looking for alternatives, rights of first refusal, you know, like offering it back to the original owners. Because I'm on the Waikato Conservation Board, I'm aware that a lot of the conservation estates made up of land that's just come into the Crown's, I suppose, control, and it's called stewardship land. I don't think there's very much in Waipa, but there's a lot in Otaronga and, yeah, further south. It's never been assessed for conservation values, and so if they want to take it and use it for this, you know, there'd be very few protections, no protections really, and I'm really concerned about it. Yeah, yeah. It does mention in that supplementary analysis report, assessment report, that it would be just as efficient to have the decision making at the panel level. Yeah, not to let the ministers have that final say, right of veto, or even override what the panel says. So it would be more efficient. You know, I think it would probably end up being better decision-making as well. Yeah, I have got quite a few comments. I'm happy to send through on the detail, but yeah, those are yeah. And I think too, often, even though they say, I mean, I think there's a lot of provisions about making sure iwi and hapu and all that and treaty entities are included, but not always local authorities. You know, it's almost like we're invisible, and communities don't even get a mention. Yeah, so yeah, that's generally, yeah, I could go on for hours. Yeah, but
Thanks,
yeah,
Claire.
not happy.
I know you could.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just suggest whatever is easier for you, Claire, whether you send them through as in an email or whether we arrange for you to have a discussion with David on his return. Thank you.
And Claire, look, thank you for your comments. Absolutely agree with everything. I mean, this is quite a significant change, and I think it's something that could really affect us. So Dale Marie, you got a question?
Ai, tēnā koutou. I echo what Claire has just said, and I think just to, with my positioning here as the Māori ward, just have to re-emphasise, this is a kick in the guts for us at Māori, for iwi Māori, this fast tracking bill. And I think this is so undemocratic that it goes down there and it will be seen by Crown witnesses, whatever those applications are, and then to have a minister just come over the top and veto it if they don't like it. And we know how chaotic this coalition government is. I'm not prepared to sit back and see us not put in a submission and not have a say. So I totally kia ora.
Thank you, Dale Marie. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, Monty.
Just following on from you, Dale Marie. I mean, this is quite a radical bill. I read it and went, oh, gee, this is return to the old days when I was growing up, basically. But on my reading of it, I thought that the one group that did have some degree of protection were mana whenua and iwi. Yeah. I read it and went, that there is a degree of protection there, but there's very little for anyone else. Was my interpretation. Do you not agree with that assessment?
Dale Marie?
Just to respond, I don't agree with it because our past dictates how we don't trust the space when they're controlling it. We are continuously told that we will be looked after and we're not looked after. So I don't agree with the bill. And I don't agree that obviously Waikato Tainui, that is why they put the marker in the sand and have gone to court because they could see this coming. This will have a huge effect on the JMA. So I wonder what the heck the coalition, and I know what the coalition government's talking. I mean, when we have a deputy prime minister that calls Māori Nazis, we're in trouble. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other specific feedback you were looking for, Kirsty, or are you happy just to take some of the feedback now? Claire's going to send some more information by the sounds.
I think that's been helpful, Madam Chair, and consistent with other feedback that we've had. So I think the key now is for David to link in with Councillor Clare to prepare drafting a submission and to link in with Mayor Susan and Wayne. If there are opportunities, time permitting, to circulate more widely, we'll endeavour to do that prior to the lodging of the submission.
Okay, Dale Marie?
Sorry, no, I have to note this on the record. As we know, it was very clear from many of our community that submitted around the incineration plant, and I understand that that could now be in a space where if it does get called in, the minister will okay that. So I need to put that on the record that the community that asked for that to be called in, and particularly the Don't Burn Waipa group, were on the impression that they would get Crown expert witnesses look at that. And I am afraid for that group now that this could really unwind that process. So, tēnā tātou.
All right, Monty.
This is just a process point. This is quite an intensely political bill, this one. It's kind of a left versus right kind of thing. And so part of me slightly worries about just the delegated authority to write a submission and send it in without having political level sign off. So, you're saying if time allows, we might get to see it.
So through you, Madam Chair, the intention is a delegation of authority to Mayor Susan representing our political body, acknowledging that these are due, the submissions are due the 19th of April. We always make our best efforts to circulate before something is submitted, and I can only make that commitment to you, best efforts.
Okay, look, and I'm sure Miss Susan will circulate what she can when she gets it. All right. Hey, look, thank you, Kirsty. Really appreciate that. Look, we have a recommendation on page 396, A, B, and C. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Dale Marie will move. Marcus will second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, our next item is our submission to the draft government policy statement on land transport for the next 10 years, 24 to 34. And with Rachel and Brian. Morning.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair, Worship Mayor and councillors. Councillors will recall the draft GPS on the land transport plan was released on the 4th of March and with submissions closing on the 2nd of April. Given the timeframe and the council meeting today on the 3rd of April, staff sought feedback from committee members prior to the submission period closing. We did not receive any feedback, so I would like to take the report as read and ask for any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, questions, Susan.
Hi guys, thank you for this. Just question, and I'm probably showing my stupidity here, but on our page, the 524 speed management paragraph, you've noted there that new roads past new schools are being designated for 30 kilometres per hour. Is that standard practice? I'm not aware of there being 30 kilometres per hour outside any school.
Sorry, yep, just to confirm, it's designed for. So, for instance, the new school in the C2 block while no speed limit has been put in place there because the road's not yet fully built or anything, or the school's not built, but the design parameters have been to encourage a 30-kilometre-hour speed past the school. So to enable that speed limit to then be posted, council would still need to go through the speed limit setting exercise, but the design is for, and that's around, the raised speed tables, width of road, intersection forms and things like that to encourage that slower speed. In the same way that many of the new subdivisions are designed for a design speed of 40 kilometres an hour. Again, quite narrow roads, inset parking, raised safety platforms at intersections and the like.
Thank you for that clarification, but aren't you in effect by designing the road for that level, then when we come to set the speed, you'll say what's designed for that speed, so you're as good as set the speed limit in advance? And if that's the case, then why does that not coincide or align with other speed limits set out by either design or by speed bylaw to 30 k's? Where did 30 k's come from, is what I'm asking.
Right, 30 k's comes from what is the current speed limit setting rule, which at the moment, the current government has said that they will change it, but the current rule in place says that by a certain date in the future, school speed limits in urban areas would be 30 kilometres an hour. So I guess yes, central government can change the rules, but when people come to us and say we're designing a new road past the school, we look at the speed limit guidance from government at the time, and we advise them to design for those limits.
Do we have any idea of what this current government would anticipate that speed limit should be set at or designed, or those roads designed for?
We don't have that level of detail from this government. We've only got some, in the GPS, some quite generic statements around considering economic issues and things, and not having blanket speed limit measures in place. So that's the very high level guidance that we have. But I would not think that that high level guidance would impact council's decisions on quite specific urban schools where design work has already been done or roads have already been built. Because you could imagine that it's not a blanket speed reduction and it would have no economic impact in those sorts of environments.
My last question, would it be more expensive to undertake the design of a road to a 30km/h speed limit, or would it be cheaper to not do so?
There would be probably no difference really in the cost because it's curbs and footpaths and street signs and things like that. So no difference really.
Cool. Thanks for that, Brian.
Oh, look, thanks, Brian. Hey, I just had a question in the submission as well. So on page 537, the roads of national significance include obviously the Cambridge to Pierere, which is fantastic, and I note that's in the submission. But also, I know the Hamilton Southern Links, and I know it's under the section where it's unlocking housing growth, which is predominantly Hamilton focused, I get that. But I still think Hamilton Southern Links is going to provide enormous benefit to Waipa in the future, particularly getting some of our heavy transport, hopefully, of State Highway 3 and onto the expressway. So I wondered if that could be included in our submission as well. I still think there's some Waipa benefit, but maybe there's a reason, not that I've missed, that there's a reason it's maybe not in there.
I guess at this stage, with that work that Waka Kotahi have been doing around the sort of form and function of Southern Links, it's probably a little bit unclear as to, there's definite things that we know now about Southern Links where there would be benefits to Waipa if it was built earlier. We could see that around the sort of commercial industrial development around the airport if it had better links, and we can see that if the Narrows Bridge was replaced with something that was, a better standard, less risky in terms of, a tight bend where there's often crashes and things like that. It's a very old bridge, it's very narrow. So there definitely would be benefits. But while we haven't mentioned it in our submission, I know that the regional land transport or the Regional Transport Committee and Future Proof have mentioned it. So I think from a Waikato perspective, it has been well canvassed in submissions.
Yeah, I guess I reflect on a lot of the commentary I hear Mayor Paula Southgate from Hamilton City, and she frequently refers to Southern Links, and she always includes the Cambridge to Pierere as well. And I guess politically, if she's supporting those two projects and most things that she's doing, it would be quite good for us to do the same. And again, that sort of just emphasises that relationship cross-boundary. So it'd be, I just think it would be a good move to include it, even if it's just a small inclusion in our submission, if possible. Shows our united front. And look, we know that there's a huge, there's a lot of competition nationwide for projects. So whether we can get both across the line, but gosh, we should give it our absolute best shot to get both of these big things done as quickly as we can. Now, we've got Roger and then Philip.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Brian. In the main, a lot of really positive points that you brought out in there. I'd like just to ask you on page 524, where 1.5.2, the traffic calming measures, you mentioned that you get a number of requests from locals to consider traffic calming measures, but contra to that, we're getting a lot of comments from our road users about the plethora of speed humps that are now appearing in our roads. And And I'm not too sure if you're aware, but there were a couple of letters submitted to Hamilton City Council from the emergency services relating how these speed humps are affecting them in terms of their response rates and also the increased costs that they're having to bear on maintenance of vehicles. I'm just wondering if that comment that you've got in there is a little bit one-sided.
Right. Thank you, Roger. I guess it is sort of a new world, isn't it, that these things have become popular in places, and we see different views. So some schools and local neighbours saying that it's great, and I've certainly had many phone calls with people saying that the high speeds and sometimes reckless driving through neighbourhoods is a real danger, and they would love to see more of this sort of thing built. But I certainly acknowledge there are the other side to the story, whether it's emergency services or heavy vehicles, or just people who don't like slowing down for pedestrian crossings, that people have adverse views as well. So I think we've got to try and do our best to keep that in balance, and only use these things where appropriate, where there is really good reason and the public can generally understand the need for them, because we certainly don't want to alienate our residents or road users by overusing them either.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point where we might be starting to get that reaction, Brian, particularly in Hamilton Road, where you've got 3 speed calming measures within 200 metres. It seems to be an overkill. Okay, but that's a different issue to this submission. I just felt that that was a little bit one-sided and gives an impression that we totally support the future introduction of speed calming measures as a strategy.
Yeah, Roger, just to clarify, it does respond to the GPS statement where they're saying that these sorts of, whether it's raised speed tables, that they shouldn't be used, whereas there definitely are locations where they are of high value, and those places outside schools, care crossings and zebra crossings and things like that, where they have a really high value for safety improvement. So I'm certainly not saying they should be used everywhere, but there are places where we should have that ability to provide that level of safety for our communities.
Okay,
Thank you, Brian, for the response. Okay, we've Philip and then Lou.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for your report today and the submission. Just briefly, in the report or your submission, it mentions about reviewing the current speed limits. When is that likely to happen?
It's coming out.
Yes, so I think the government has said that they would have a new speed limit setting rule in place before the end of this year. So we don't want to do work that's then is of no value if the speed limit rule changes. So we really want to see that draft rule come out before we do any further work on any changes.
So likely maybe next year, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Lou?
Yeah, thank you. I'm on the right thing this time. I have to apologise. I read the whole of the government policy statement in end to end. One of the key things that we don't recognise in here is the change in regulatory for cars, particularly. They're going to change the safety of cars quite a lot. We've got a lot of vehicles on our road right at the moment. I'm an ex-mechanic, so I do know what I'm talking about, that should not be on the road. Simply, as simple as that. They put worn tyres, worn suspensions, things like this. The second thing they're doing is increasing the police presence. Now, why I'm saying this, perhaps in our submission, do we support that? The fact that they got drug testing, they're saying they're going to do 50,000 drug tests minimum. They're going to do at least 3 million alcohol related tests. I feel that this is something that we should actually be supporting as a council, because I think that has far more impact than putting things out in structures. This is stopping people at the early stage that are driving cars erratically, etc., and can be, taken off the road. So I just wonder whether we should support that in our submission.
Thank you, Lou. Actually, in the submission at 1.5.1, we do talk about road safety there, noting that during COVID, the police resources were elsewhere occupied, and so there were an increase in crashes. And the last sentence there, we support ensuring police are resourced to target this high-risk area. And just from my experience, so when I was looking after state highway networks in the Bay of Plenty, we had a police program where the police would patrol State Highway 29 through the winter months with a constant presence there during the daylight hours, and it reduced the crash rate by 50% on that high-risk road. And that's just simply the police being present, causing people to slow down and drive more carefully.
Okay, all right, thank you. No other questions? Right, we have on page 154, we've got the recommendations A and B. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Philip. All in favour? Carried. All right, everybody, that brings us to the close of our meeting. Thanks for everyone's attendance. What we will do is close with a karakia.
Tēnā tātou, e hui tere I te rānei, which means we've gone fast. Hā ki roto, hā ki waho, kia tau te mauri e kōkiri nei I ngā piki mena heke. Ko te rangi Māori e taku I rapu nei, ti hei mauri ora. Have a great day, everyone, in this beautiful land of Waipa. Tēnā tātou.